All right, Nick, today we're going to talk about nocturnal animals, which I think is kind of funny in a way that it perpetuates this myth that Amy Adams and Isla Fisher are the exact same person.
What the hell? Okay,
my wife...
You're going to have to explain this.
My wife pointed this out to me. She thought that they were the same person at one point. And then I looked online. It's apparently a perpetuated thing. And it's true of, like, maybe it's the red-haired woman kind of a thing where it's Jessica Chastain and Bryce Dallas Howard. People get confused.
Yeah.
And now we have Amy Adams.
I even get those confused.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that might be a problem. And then it was only more perpetuated when they're both playing kind of the same character.
And being in the same movie. And then you're like, well, yeah, the same kind of role almost.
Yeah.
We'll explain a little bit.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Welcome to Kyle and Nick on Film. Today we're talking Nocturnal Animals starring Amy Fisher and Isla Adams. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and a film director and a comic book artist. If you're new here, thank you for watching. I hope you like it and subscribe. If you're a regular, thanks you for being part of the team. Check out our Patreon for some options, and tell your friends, tell everybody about us. The show, we greatly appreciate it. We definitely noticed it.
Definitely.
Today we're talking Nocturnal Animals.
Yes, we're continuing our trek through 2016 with Nocturnal Animals from director Tom Ford. And it features Susan, an art gallery owner who is sent a book manuscript by her ex-husband, Edward. Yes. As she reads it, she begins to see striking parallels to her own situation and her previous time with Edward. As Susan's life begins to crumble and wither around her, she questions the nature of the novel and Edward's reasons for sending it.
So this is Tom Ford. He's well known as a fashion designer before he took up movies. This is his second film. His first one was A Single Man with Colin Firth, and Colin got an Oscar nomination for that role. Here, Tom adapts a book based, I think the title is called Tony and Susan.
Tony and Susan, I believe.
Written by Austin Wright, which is kind of the same things, a little bit slightly different. But in that book, Susan gets a screenplay, a story, a book. And the story is called Nocturnal Animals. And it kind of, Edward is the author. And there's definitely a lot of similarities, but a lot of differences. I love this movie, and I hate this movie at the same time.
You know, it's interesting to me because I can't in all good conscience say that, like, it's a perfect movie. But I definitely, I find it intriguing through all the reasons I wouldn't normally watch it. Because I'll tell you one thing for sure, being a writer myself, I can't stand books within books or movies within movies where a bulk of the narrative is spent on that. You know, it's because it's not real, and it's weird for me to be like a person who's so enamored with.
You and I, we've read a lot of other people's screenplays. That's what you do when you're a writer. Hey, read my screenplay, and I've written. Never have I ever gotten something even that's a good screenplay. Never have a reaction like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. But like, you know, I think about Watchmen, where they had that Tales from the Black Freighter, you know, short piece that was they even did it for the movie version. They did an Ultimate Edition that has that mixed in. And I don't think it's as strong as watching those two pieces separately. A film like Sucker Punch, another Zack Snyder movie, where like a bulk of the film is imagined. I don't like those kinds of things, you know, and especially with Sucker Punch, I vehemently have distaste for it because it's such a wasted amount of time when we could be focusing on the real characters, even though they're fictional in a sense as well. So for this movie, it's kind of like, I don't really know why I like spending more time with the story in a story concept, because I normally hate it.
Right, and there's a lot of things, like I said, I love about this. I love the look of it. I love the texture of it. Tom Ford obviously knows fashion, and he really kicks it out. He didn't do the fashion costuming in this. He hired somebody else to do it because he didn't want to been too much busy and promote some other people.
I respect that he actually chose someone else to do the costume designing. He used the phrase, I didn't want it to be a commercial for my stuff. And I really respect that actually because, you know, it's kind of like if I, a writer, were to direct something and say, but I don't want to write it. It's kind of like, you know, you really have to kind of take a step back and trust someone else with something you love, you know?
I would have to say each character has something I have a real found disdain for. All of them in this movie are just overly shallow. There's really all of them are completely empty. I think Susan's the one that kind of doesn't really get it. Everybody else seems to recognize that they are shallow people.
And that's for the most part. There's that difference between the creator, you know, the artist, and the person who's kind of facilitating the art. her being the art gallery owner, she doesn't really have a emotional connection to the pieces because she has never created them. She, willingly doesn't want to put herself out there to do that, and that's the big difference.
She's running a gallery, right?
Is that he's putting himself out there. He's failing, a lot in his past until this final success here. And that's, again, like Andrea Riseborough's character, Michael Sheen's character. They both appear in smaller roles in the film, and they're also extremely shallow people who, again, have no emotional connection. Yeah, Jenna Malone.
Yeah, so it's a lot of what I would say Tom Ford is when he critiques art. There's a lot of beautiful things about this, but when you go below the surface, there is nothing there. And the content of writing a screenplay and submitting it to your ex-girlfriend, almost driving using art as a weapon, almost, where she has an emotional reaction to it. Mm-hmm. But everybody seems to not really fully develop maturity in this.
Mm. That's fair.
But in the story of Nocturnal Animals, there's a sense of, well, it's a noir, so that's why I don't like it.
There's a level of growth to the characters. They evolve over the course of the story. And that's what's interesting is that I think the Nocturnal Animals book that she's reading, I prefer it to what's going on in the real world. And again, that's a very odd situation because I don't normally like that kind of stuff. I prefer this story. Like, I want to watch like a full movie of this story of him with Michael Shannon hunting down this guy, And I think that's kind of where like the juxtaposition comes in because they're two drastically different stories. The one within the story and then what's going on the outside.
Yeah,
and maybe that's why the film didn't find an audience.
Yeah.
Because I'm a rarity in that I could like both of these stories. But people that like the revenge tale of what's going on in the book, it's not exactly the same movie on the outside, so you may not like those long stretches of time where you don't get the meat of what you're looking for.
In fact, emphasize the shallow emptiness here. She's reading a screenplay by her ex-boyfriend called, for a revenge tale, and she goes to the gallery. There's a huge painting called Revenge on it. It says revenge on it, and she has no emotional reaction to it. It's just part of the ensemble decoration piece there.
Yeah.
As well as Jenna Malone. Then that scene, Jenna Malone introduces her kid. Here, I can watch her kid on the monitor. She has no reaction. It's almost like viewing it, almost like you're viewing us on YouTube. There's just no reaction to it, really, just viewing it to view it, right? And it's her own kid.
Well, the only thing that produces any emotion from her is what she thinks she sees in the image instead of what's actually there. How does this affect me? How does looking at this camera affect me? And she almost conjures up a fake affectation for it, which is really kind of unusual. And the revenge thing for me is kind of like, it's maybe like one of those on-the-nose things where Tom Ford's hitting a little bit too close. I think a lot of us have gotten at this point kind of where it's going. Mm-hmm. There's a few moments of that where he's kind of hitting you over the head, but then I also like his extreme subtlety in certain areas too, where I watched this film for the first time back in 2016 when it came out, and I didn't really care to make the connection between the two stories. I just thought they were both interesting stories. And like, I knew there was bits and pieces. I knew a rewatch would help. But I was like, I don't really care. Like, I enjoyed both, and that's all I needed. And it's only going back to it later on that I've been able to kind of really piece together some of the more nuanced pieces.
So yeah, it's a homage to the Western noirs. I like noir styles. And in the noirs, everybody is pretty much doomed. Yeah, and especially in the story of the story, everybody is pretty much doomed. And there is no hero, there is no protagonist. There are definitely antagonists. Mm-hmm. You got I forget his name.
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
There he is. He's played a lot of superheroes, but he's not a superhero in this one. Really having no motivation. He's just doing it because they're weak, right? Mm-hmm. There's really no motivation of other than just doing, which is circumnavigating back to what I've said. They're all shallow, empty characters and people in this story.
Yeah, and I like that, again, upon a rewatch, I do think this film requires multiple viewings if you really want to embrace what's going on.
So much subtleties in this.
Yeah, it's too subtle for a single viewing, but the nice thing is it's entertaining enough to want to revisit it. But I do think it's nice to place each of the characters in the story as either a part of the psyche of one of our main characters outside the story, or as a physical affectation of, we talked about Isla Fisher and Amy Adams, very, shockingly close in how they look, and then again, of course, playing versions of each other. And I like that we're seeing Nocturnal Animals from the viewpoint of Amy Adams' character Susan. So in her mind, she's not playing that character. Yeah. Someone else is. Yeah. But she sees Edward as the Tony character.
And
I
Edward's
think that's really
playing
interesting is that Jake Gyllenhaal plays both roles.
Both roles. Other performances are really fantastic, and then Michael Sheen Michael Sheen's in this, but also Michael Shannon is in this, and I think he did get an Oscar nomination.
He did. This was the lone Oscar nomination for this film, and I think it's the most deserving nomination. I would go as far as to say this is Michael Shannon's best performance that I can think of. I went looking through his catalog, and I was like, I don't know if I prefer any of his performances over this one, because what's interesting is, again, it's so one note in some ways, but it's also like he's also the most interesting and layered character, and Shannon brings so much to the character and fleshes it out more than just the writing on the page, which is again supposed to be intentionally.
Yeah, he could have been, like you said, he's one note. He could just phone it in and be lazy, and and it'll be interesting. But he provides a little bit more depth to this character, more depth than anybody else in this. But I think that's intentional. I think he's probably the one who actually has more depth than anybody because everybody else is so shallow. Kim Basinger was supposed to be in this movie playing Amy Adams' mom. I don't know I didn't really research what happened, but she was removed. And Laura Linney does a fantastic job playing this mother who is just, don't shame me, pretty much. Right?
Yeah. Don't bring shame upon the family. And you know, and I like those, again, looking back, there's almost like 3 different timelines going on. There's the fictitious book timeline, there's the past timeline, because we don't ever actually see Edward in the present in the entire film. We see him in the past or in the book version of the character. So we see the flashback time and then the center time, and I like seeing those flashbacks and how she's kind of putting together, it's almost like she's looking at a car crash before it happens and trying to like figure out what really caused this rift between them and how she can try and engage back into it, but also being confused about the book. And that scene with Laura Linney is very strong because, again, it's on the nose.
No, she's right.
She's remembering it through her lens.
What Laura Linney is basically saying, you are shallow just like me. You're going after this art, you're going to be an artist, and secondly, and you're going to marry this Edward guy, and that's not who you are. And she's constantly fighting who she really is, which is a shallow millionaire art gallery runner who there's really nothing to her.
Yep. And because she's afraid. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is that she closes off every emotion. That's why everything in her day-to-day life is so brick and mortar, so clean across the edges. There's no rough edges in there. And, and every interaction
her life is
like
very
that.
Clean, but the nocturnal story is very dirty.
Yeah.
Let's get her plunge in.
And those are the juxtapositions of like Edward not getting where he wants to be. He's failing a lot, which every artist has to do. But then you also get her that she's choosing not to try because she doesn't want the failure. Although I will say this, that scene where she's critiquing his work, I disagree with that scene wholeheartedly, because no artist would be mad actually getting feedback from their spouse. It doesn't happen. My wife reads my stuff and she goes, I think it's wonderful. And I say, I think you're wrong. And I don't want you to tell me that. I want you to give me evidence.
Honesty.
And so that's one scene I have a lot of problems with, because I think, for me, it didn't ring true as that he was actually an artist then, because every artist wants their spouse to give them actual details, even if afterwards they punish them for it.
Something to I can grasp, but you be honest with the criticisms. It just doesn't be like my, oh, I like it, I'm going to hang it on my fridge. That kind of attitude.
Nobody wants that. And he's not getting that. He's getting actual meat of the story, and this isn't good enough for him.
The cinematography is really, really remarkable. This is something that I think that's why I like watching it. It has that look and the feel of a noir, and the environments that Amy Adams, it's wonderful gaffing, wonderful lighting. I don't think it really works very well for the editing. I think there's some things that can trim a lot of fat away that really, we can even remove Armie Hammer from it, and you can get something out of it. But,
Well, and I think Seamus McGarvey was the director of photography here, and we've talked about his work with, we need to talk about Kevin, other films of the like. So and this is actually his favorite film of the ones he's worked on. He's most proud of the work.
Two challenges
here. It's 2 different challenges. But you can see a lot of, we need to talk about Kevin within this, with some of the cold-hearted stuff, but also some of the grimy stuff. It's kind of like, that's just more mixed into one narrative, whereas this is obviously 2. I do think trimming definitely could have been done, but I like the Armie Hammer character because, again, he showcases what she has now and her regret, in not choosing him. Because the whole film for me feels like it's a parable about, like, you
want success,
wanting success over the people that you're around. It's kind of like a flip side of La La Land, which we talked about, which is like you can have both, but you just have to measure your success the way you measure the people you're around.
One of my favorite directors and writers was Sam Fuller, and he always told that parable of two writers passing on the street, and one of them's like, "Gosh, I wish I could write like that guy," and the other guy, "Gosh, I wish I could make money like that guy."
That's true, yeah.
So I think we're having that kind of argument here in this movie, that you're giving up something to be really enhanced in wealth, but if you really want to be true to yourself, you're going to have to get dirty, down and dirty about it.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I'm going to talk about what I don't like. It seems so juvenile, the entire movie. Oh, the whole motivation to write this, to submit it to his ex-girlfriend, and then the ending, it's a little more like we're back in junior high almost.
Yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Part of me thinks that we in our relationships, when things start to go bad, we do regress, for better or worse. We do tend to look at things in the past of like, how do we get at people? How do we get our vengeance and stuff like that? And we do, when we do vengeance, we become childish.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I believe that that's true as much, but I believe that that's kind of what's taking place in the film, is that when you do want to take it out or showcase how you're better off without them now, to get juvenile about it, because that's really what's going on. I don't think about my past romances, in that way where it's like, oh, I want to showcase them, how wrong they were.
Right, yeah.
I'm fine with the current.
Yeah. So at the core, that's what I really have a disdain for. But as you emphasize, it's not really this story you tell, it's how you tell it. And this is a remarkable telling of a story. I do like the Nocturnal Animals noir point of view. I do like the overly fashionably design of the house, the making of it. Everybody's kind of distant. Even when Michael Sheen and Amy Adams are close by, they have this dialogue that's just empty. It's, oh, you're out there, and you're not really out there. You're just making art for art's sake. You're not really doing anything. Right? Yeah. So there's that point of view, but overall, it's a love-hate relationship. Multiple viewings, I enjoyed. I forget everything what we have to watch in the beginning of the movie every time.
Oh, yeah, we got to talk about those opening credits a little bit.
Every time we start this movie, go, right, that's right. I forgot that we start with this.
Yeah, Tom Ford really knows how to open a film with something unique and something special. And
you're a fashion designer.
I really admire like what he's doing with the opening, because it's an eye-catching opening. I always think when the movie starts, this thought goes to my head every single time, which is, I wonder what this movie looks like when you watch it on TV. Like, I immediately think of, like,
I've never seen it on theater. If I saw it in theater, I would be like,
yeah, I think I rented this before the Oscars because I wanted to catch the performance. We talked about the things you didn't like. I agree. There's some trimming that I would do, not necessarily with Hammer, but just certain things. Like, I don't think the Jenna Malone scene is as needed. It provides an impact. It provides a scare. But again, like, I don't know if I needed that so much. I also think there's some stuff in the book manuscript that we could have just trimmed. Not cut full scenes, but just trimmed a little bit.
There's a lot of just hold that posture, that look.
And what I would ask for more is a little bit more of that connection as she's reading the book. Because I want to see what she takes out of each scene as she finishes it. So you could actually make this film, I think, better without even cutting, which is just changing up what you're putting in to having it affect more. Because
puzzle pieces.
Yeah, because I don't know if there's that connection as much. Like I said, the first time I watched it, I just enjoyed it as two separate stories. And I didn't really care to think about how they were connected and what was going on. It wasn't really in the frame.
It's a fascinating idea of exploration. How would you? Because it's multiple pieces. I would actually start with the story within the story.
Yep.
I actually would start it that way, and then let's go with the noir, and then where are we going to? How does that get delivered into her hands? But Tom Ford likes the punch of the empty shallowness. Let's just demonstrate this.
And I would argue that in having what I think is a more entertaining and engaging novel, that I don't care as much about the Amy Adams portion of the film.
Exactly.
I don't. I think it's fine. But like, I think if you were to take this movie and cut it in half and make two movies, make one that's the Revenge Sale and one that's the Amy Adams reading a book. First of all, it'd be tough because she's literally reading a book the whole movie. But I don't care as much about what's going on in her life because I don't really like her that much. She's not a very likable person.
Right,
she's interesting, but likable is really kind of not in there. Whereas I think Jake Gyllenhaal's character within the novel, within the movie, is interesting and likable. You want to see him get his vengeance, even though you know that it's not going to lead anywhere good for him.
And I would say it's hard. It's a question of how would you balance this out, and that's where editing. there's a lot of questions I could have done with editing. You slide this here, move this here, and stuff like that. Where editing, if you had a really remarkable editor, this could knock it out. But yeah, this is what we have, and I still enjoy it. But it's just, we wish they could be elevated a little bit more. Peter Travers from Rolling Stones thought it was one of the best films of the year, 2016. And first viewing, I understand why. The looks and the costuming, everything. It feels like you're part of this world. That you feel like the part of the characters. You understand the shallowness of everybody around. But I just, after 5 years, it didn't really age very well. It's almost like great wine, and then you. Yeah.
I think I like it more.
You do?
You know, I think I find more to appreciate about it, because every time I watch it, I find something new about it. Like this time when I was watching it, I noticed props more in the film. I noticed that the car that he's driving in the novel is featured in the film in one scene. I noticed that the couch she's sitting on when she's giving him feedback on his work is the very couch that he finds his wife in the novel. Like the prop works kind of, and that's always a way to like win me over, because I'm the same way when I watch the movie Cloud Atlas. Is I'm like, oh, the ring, it's in this timeline and that timeline. I'm like tracking props throughout time. I found more to like about that. I really admired the score this time. I really breathed in the score.
We didn't talk about that, but that's really
Abel Korzeniowski. I'm going to say it wrong. There's a lot of letters in that last name, but he also did The Nun recently, which I thought The Nun's score was probably one of the best elements of.
It's a highly underrated horror movie. I really enjoyed that one. That was kind of just popped out of nowhere.
Yeah, so I found more I've appreciated with since that time is just like breathing it in. I think I got the opening a little bit more. I think I got what was being going for, and I also say I admire tenacity and I admire ambition more than I admire a finished product. I would rather have a person like Tom Ford swing for the fences and hit at least half of it than try and make something rote that we've seen before. I'd rather see ambition.
So that's what I admire by the movie Tenet, which has a lot of flaws in it, but it's Nolan taking a big bat.
And that's what I said when I was watching Tenet. I was like, I'm not sure if it's working, but I can't stop watching.
And that's the criticism that a lot of it with Nolan is the details are kind of neglected, but he's swinging a big bat, and he's trying to, even if you get it just out the outfield a little bit, that's remarkable. So, I think we're kind of in the same universe of everybody else that's seen this movie. There's some things that are magnificently I love about this movie, and then I forget we're back in this junior high attitude that I just, but it's intentional. These characters are still kind of not really developed.
Let's see, and for myself, not having seen a Single Man, which I have not seen it yet, I still, on this one cusp of this movie, I'm interested to see what Tom Ford does next. I would like to see another film, because I do think that, again, I will admire ambition to the end of the days, even if the film doesn't work. Some of my favorite directors, not all of their films really connect, but the ambition of it really wins me over, because I would like to see something unique. And that's what this film is for all of its faults and all of its success. It's a very unique film, even though the story is something we've kind of heard before, So overall, I think we both kind of like...
I recommend it.
We both recommend the film. Nick kind of has lowered over time, but I've raised over time. So who knows? If you've seen the film only once, maybe a second viewing might...
I think it has to, especially explain, we have to have a second viewing. Have you seen Nocturnal Animals? Or are you a Nocturnal Animals stuff?
Yeah, it's not a film I would say to watch in the middle of the night, because it is kind of a slow burn. So if you're nocturnal, maybe just wait till the morning. But let us know in your comments down below what you think about this film. Have you seen A Single Man, and do you think this is something is it better or worse? I've heard a lot of people say that they like Nocturnal Animals more, which is always a good trajectory for your career as a filmmaker.
We'll review it if you join the Patreon and tell us what to do.
Definitely, we're looking forward to that. So don't forget to check out that link to the Patreon as well. And again, we appreciate your likes, we appreciate your comments, we appreciate your subscriptions, and we appreciate you guys joining us today.
Thank you guys.
Yep.
Thank you.
So Nick, where can we find you?
I can find my podcast, the St. Paul Filmcast, on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Radio, and Stitcher.
Thank you. And you can find all my film reviews on goatfilmreviews.com. And Nick, if it's a fashion kind of movie, we only have to end with voguing, I think.
I'm so bad at that.